Kelso Longview Chamber of Commerce, proud sponsors of the Washington State 19th Legislative District candidate debate.
Our Chamber of Commerce gives out tourist information and industrial development information. This office gladly gives out information of the states of Washington and Oregon, the lower Columbia River area, the ocean beaches, hotels, motels, mountain resorts, and hunting guides and highway reports.
Kelso Longview Chamber of Commerce.
It's the region's leading literary lifestyle publication. From offices in Longview, Columbia River Reader distributes 15,000 copies a month, helping you to discover and enjoy the good life around the Columbia River region, at home and on the road. Pick up your free copy today or join our Collectors Club. Since 2004, Columbia River Reader.
That's Ponson Instruments, downtown Longview. They have shotguns, rifles, knives, bow hunting equipment, musical instruments, guitars, drums, keyboards, amps, picks, strings, drumsticks, and accessories, fishing gear, reels, grills, line, lures, DVD, Blu-ray, and Disney. Free popcorn for kids 12 and under. Pets, Ponds, and Instruments, proud sponsors of the Washington State 19th Legislative District candidate debates.
Hello again, I'm Bill Markham with the Kelso Longview Chamber, and we're here with the second round of the Cowlitz Citizens Update, Washington State 19th District Legislative Candidate Debates. And with us for our second round will be Senator Dean Tacko and challenger Jeff Wilson. Our moderator tonight is Hal Calvin. Hal, the floor is yours.
Bill, thank you so much. Greetings to you, our viewers, this evening for the second of our debates. My first job is to thank our sponsors tonight, Cowlitz County Citizens Update, the Longview-Kelso Chamber of Commerce, of course, who Bill represents, Columbia River Reader, dear to my heart, that's our region's leading literary lifestyle publication. Grants at the Monticello, I have to get this in completely or I don't get free fondue later. Come down by 4 entrees and get complimentary free fondue. And finally, Pets, Ponds, and Instruments. They're located in downtown Longview, ready to serve your sporting goods, musical, and jewelry needs. Tonight we have hosted 2 debates, as Bill mentioned previously. 19th District Representative Brian Blake debated his challenger, Republican Joel McIntyre. In this, the second of the debates, will begin for the seat of the 19th District incumbent Senator Dean Tacko, a Democrat, and we'll hear from his challenger, Republican Jeff Fisher. Our ground rules are simple. I'll repeat them briefly for you again. Each candidate will make an opening statement, and we'll conclude with a 5-minute closing statement. During the middle hour, I will propose a series of questions. I've chosen these myself and reserve the right to rebut or follow up as deemed appropriate. I encourage both of our candidates to be courteous and please signal me if they choose to do a further rebuttal. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce your candidates tonight. First, Dean Tacko. I'm sorry?
Yes, my name is Jeff Wilson.
Did I not say Jeff Wilson? What did I say?
Jeff Fisher.
Some other person.
I'm sorry, Jeff Wilson. That gives you a substantial advantage already over the debate.
Thank you.
Dean Tacko was born in Ilwaco and is a lifelong Washingtonian. He's a graduate of Wahkiakum High School, Lower Columbia College, and Western Washington University. He is a former county assessor for both Wahkiakum and Cowlitz counties and was first appointed to the legislature in 2004. Dean chairs the Senate Local Government Committee. Please welcome Dean and thank you for joining us. Now I'm really bamboozled, Jeff, and I apologize to you again. He has been active in the 19th District for over 50 years, a successful entrepreneur and business owner. Married with 2 children, Jeff is active in the community service, serving as the president of the Longview 23 Club, among other affiliations. Jeff currently serves as Vice President for the Port of Longview Board of Commissioners, elected in 2015. Jeff, thank you for joining us. As the challenger, I'd like to invite you to give your opening statement first. Good luck to both you gentlemen.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the Kelso Longview Chamber of Commerce and, of course, Grants is mentioned for the fondue and all of the other supporters tonight, including Citizens Update. Hal did a very good job. For those of you that don't know me, I have been a resident of Cowlitz County for 50 years. And my wife, Tricia, and I have 2 grown children. I have served and graduated locally from high school and went on to have some college at Western Washington University. And then my appetite to go to work bit me at age 26 when I started my first company. But prior to being an employer, I was an employee, and I have been an employee for many companies. My first job started at age 11. So I've been working ever since, and so at age 26, I had my chance to start my own business, and that business to this day is still out providing family wage jobs. I'm very proud of that. Later on in years, I started other companies locally that have operated successfully. Until age 55, I decided to enter politics. Of all things, I really wanted a chance to apply my business experience and skills to our local port, dealing in cargoes, relationships and contracts and budgets. I thought I could be well suited to apply my successful business methods to the port. So I was elected in 2016, and since then I have kept all of my political promises. Number 1, I'm not a career politician. Number 2, I have dropped taxes over 53% for my port district. I'm very proud of that. These are very simplistic goals to achieve if electeds or even businessmen, just simply 2 very basic principles. Always follow the will of the people and respect the Constitution. Based on my experience, I have obviously a passion for what I do. My community is something I'm also very proud to be a part of. I enjoy being a citizen activist, leading by example. And just last year, I was overwhelmed and received the award to the Key to the City of Longview. And my wife and I were also awarded the Extra Mile Award for being, I guess you would say, very caring and passionate citizens. I will take all of that passion and my business skills to Olympia, and I'll keep my promises. Thank you.
Dean Tacko, your opening statement, please.
Yeah, well, of course, I want to thank all those that sponsored it that you mentioned earlier, and particularly you, Hal, for coming down and moderating this. Since you're giving us a little extra time, I might go back a generation or 2. My grandpa and grandma immigrated here from Finland in the beginning of the 1900s and had 5 boys. All of them, including my dad, were commercial fishermen. One of them actually died in a fishing accident on the Columbia River and drowned. And so I think that probably is one of the reasons why I care so much about the commercial fishing industry. I grew up in El Waco, watching a very vibrant community with a fishing heritage, which isn't there today. My dad died when I was 8 years old, and later my mom remarried, and we moved to Cathlamet, where I graduated from high school, as you said. And I went on to LCC and then graduated from Western Washington University. Went into the Army for a while, came back home, kind of wondering what I want to do with my life. And some people said, why don't you run for county assessor? You're a smart kid. And I go, well, what the heck? You know, I'm not afraid to try something. So I ran for county assessor. I won it. I spent 1 term in Cathlamet as the county assessor. Then I was hired by the assessor up here in Cowlitz County to be his chief deputy. Did that for 20 years. And when Ray Ryan, the assessor at that time, retired, I ran twice and was elected assessor. You know, I was at the end of the 30 years that I spent in the assessor's office. I was appointed to the House of Representatives when Brian Hatfield resigned, and later when he resigned from the Senate where he had gone to, I was appointed to take that position. So that's how I got to this position today. But in the meantime, I've done a lot of things. I have been on the other side of the counter, as I like to say it. A couple of my friends and I created a small company, and we built houses, and we sold building material, and we developed land. So I've been on that side of the counter where you have to, you know, kind of argue with the bureaucrat to get that permit. One of the things I really enjoyed for 30 years was I was a volunteer fireman, both in Cap-Lamet and in Fire District 2 in Longview. One of my other passions is the Lions Club. 41 years I've been in the Lions and do a lot of volunteer work, mostly through the Lions Club. So that's kind of where I got here today. My wife and I have one son and 2 granddaughters, and I try to spend as much time as I can with them. So that's kind of my story. Thank you.
Thank you both. We'll alternate our questions. I'd like to give my first one to Jeff. Although we're in the midst of a pandemic, we hope it is soon behind us. But right now, do you have an opinion about the handling of the COVID-19 crisis by particularly Governor Jay Inslee and the way we have reacted to it?
Well, of course, I think everybody has an opinion, but I'd like to say that opinions change. At the beginning, when we first were faced with dealing with the pandemic, nobody knew what to do. Therefore, I'll defend the governor. No, there was no playbook. There was no step-by-step instructions. So a lot of it was simply just left up to our process, the executive orders. I mean, he is the governor. These are part of his job to decide some of these things, these steps. And so we listened to a lot of that. We heard a lot of daily deliveries of flattening the curve. But we also started to hear some things that didn't make sense. You could go fishing, you could go out in a boat, but you couldn't go fishing. You could go shop at Walmart, but you couldn't shop at the little corner entrepreneur, locally owned grocery store. These decisions became really now time to call the question. So the one thing that the pandemic should have done is woken everybody up. Because we don't know, we know we've made some mistakes, and the governor has made a ton of mistakes. This guy is famous for mistakes, our governor. But we need to come together now. We should have went to work as a legislature. I don't want to blame just the governor. I would like to cast some of that responsibility on the legislature and the governor for not calling a special session so we could have had a better talk of this opinion.
Dean Tacko, as a member of that legislature, your response?
Well, I think generally speaking, we did a good job of controlling the COVID virus. Early on, as Jeff has said, we didn't know what it was. We locked it down pretty tight. We were ground zero for the thing up there in Seattle. I think you can look at the statistics of our state versus other states that didn't do what we did, and you can see that we were pretty successful. But with that said, I gotta agree that there was some arbitrary decisions made on the part of the health department, and it wasn't just the governor. You know, there was a Department of Health behind him, advising him. But I actually contacted the governor personally, as well as his staff that were working on this, and argued that, you know, there were some things that didn't make sense, like the fishing and the hunting. One of my biggest complaints was, why didn't we have a clam season when there was 13 million clams out there that could have been dug? And so, yeah, I don't agree with everything that was done. I think there was a lot of arbitrary decisions made there, but I think it was made in good faith, trying to keep this thing contained, and I think we've done a pretty good job of it. I am scared. You can look at our state around different places that are opening up, and you can see the rates going up. You can look in other states that have opened up dramatically, and you see the rates going up and the death going up. So I tell you, I am very much concerned. Why we didn't have a special session, there's actually quite a number of reasons. But one of them, when you come to this thing, is I think all in all, a fairly good job was done. Again, I didn't agree with everything, but once you have a special session, it can go for 30 days and everything's on the table. And I can just see that if we would have had a special session for a number of reasons, including this, that we would have a 30-day session arguing over things other than COVID. So I'll end there.
Jeff, a further comment?
Yes, I won't support Dean's opinion, although it's his. The opinion that's cast that the governor made arbitrary decisions, I can support that, but let's go back and look at some of those decisions. construction is not essential. But construction for a government or a tax-paying job is essential, but private sector construction was deemed non-essential. You know, those tax-paying companies, those companies that have health and safety plans in, these are professional people to deal with this. So I'll show you that may have been an arbitrary action, but it came with deep consequences, and now our economy lay before us to deal with.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next question, and I apologize to our last group for my informality in referring to you as Dean and Jeff, but obviously I have problems with last names anyway. So thank you for allowing me that informality.
Well, to be honest,
Dean,
I prefer to be called Dean.
all right. Dean, a question for you. No secret that we here in the Lower Columbia have watched a succession of pretty ambitious projects submarined by state ecology department, various environmental and bureaucratic regulations. Do you feel like our Department of Ecology has overstepped its bounds in the way it has choked off some of these supposed developments?
Yes, I would say so. I will say that when it comes to monitoring the air and the water and the discharges, I think the Department of Ecology does a decent job at that. Where I don't agree with the Department of Ecology is the SEPA and some of the rules that we have to go through that drag these projects on and on. Business wants a decision. Whether it's yes or no isn't so important as give it in a timely manner so we can go and continue on with what we want to do. You know, when it comes to the methanol plant, which is getting a lot of press these days, I was in the room with Northwest Innovations Works and the Department of Ecology and representatives of the governor's office arguing these things. So I've been engaged in this for some time because of the frustration that this thing just drags on, and you get to one point and then the goalpost moves further on. So yes, I am very frustrated with the Department of Ecology on permitting, and primarily my biggest complaint is with how they handled the burrowing shrimp out in Willapa Bay. You know, there's an industry out there that is very, very important to those people, and it's diminishing every day as these burrowing shrimp cannot be controlled. It is very frustrating, and I had a bill to move that spray program from the Department of Ecology to the Department of Ag that handles all the rest of the spray for agriculture. And I tried to do it. We had scientists there, we had oyster growers. The science was there that it was a good thing. But when we had people come in and testify that we don't want spray in the bay, now don't forget that we sprayed thousands and thousands of acres of Spartina and got rid of it. Everything came to an end. So I've tried to help those oyster growers, but it's a brick wall.
Jeff, how might you do better as a legislator to get results and remove some of these impediments?
Well, I liked your previous question when you had mentioned that our economy projects have been submarined in our district because of ecology. So legislation...
Which is probably a bias in my question that I apologize in advance.
That's okay, sir. And
it's a powerful word.
That's okay. I appreciate it because there's nothing wrong with being very realistic and passionate, because in fact, that state agency not only has submarine, I would have probably put a more word like torpedo. And the legislation that we all talk about, there's problems with ecology. I actually acted on it. As a port commissioner, I organized, not as a port commissioner, I'm a seated port commissioner, I organized a protest against ecology and brought out all of the electeds from across the aisle a few years ago, you know, Democrats and Republicans and everybody in between, to try to get everybody to come together and say, wake up. I'm a Port of Longview commissioner. We're losing projects because of a state agency, and I need your help. I went to see Senator Taco. He was the last person that day for me to get out of the office to join me on this protest against ecology. So we talk about legislation. Absolutely, should have been crafted a long time ago. All of this has happened, give credit where credit needs to be due. The last several years in Washington State, we've had a Democratic governor, a Democratic majority in the House, and a Democratic majority in the Senate. There's little you can do except damage control, so I'll offer to the people that have been in charge, why haven't you written the legislation for reform? I know, I'm going to do it. Maybe that's a better answer, but I am very much prepared to draft reform legislation for bureaucratic agencies to hold our entire economies at hostage.
Given that we all appreciate the quality of life that we hold dear here, if not ecology, who acts on behalf of our environment?
Can you go ahead and flip your mic up?
Okay. Who acts on behalf of the environment, if not ecology? Who's responsible for that stewardship? Either of you.
I would like to take a...
Jeff, before you start.
Question then, who acts as a steward? We have a lot of people who are viewing this that are not necessarily anti every project, but they're certainly pro beautiful rivers and clean air. Who acts as the steward if ecology doesn't?
Well, I think we can have both. You know, I don't think anyone wants to have dirty water and dirty air. And I think that the Department of Ecology can get there. You know, the numbers are there for this project, has a positive effect on greenhouse gas emissions. So if it has a positive effect, it creates thousands of jobs, both under construction and hundreds of jobs when it's built. You know, I just have a hard time understanding how someone looking at the science cannot be for the project.
Jeff?
Well, stewardship is something I practice, Hal. And to the viewers, those of you who know me personally, for years I have walked the streets of our communities in Southwest Washington, and I enjoy actually picking up trash and needles. And so I believe stewardship is inherent to the power of the people, just like Article 1 of the Constitution. However, we've set up this agency called Ecology, and they are good stewards to what they're held accountable for. We need to reform them to insert the voice of the people. In other words, so how about some elected oversight from people besides the governor? The governor is essentially the appointer of all of those positions. That one person kind of controls that, and that's not enough electeds. I think we need another voice or two to represent all of us as citizens, because we do care. Nobody's going to dispute that we want clean air, land, and water. I mean, that should be the status quo. And I practice personal stewardship at my house in an ecological way in my neighborhood. Again, I lead by activism and have done so in many communities.
Speaking of the voice of the people, Senator Taco, is there a reason why the state should not honor the initiative vote that enacted $30 car tabs?
Well, that initiative, like most initiatives, are very frustrating because I think most initiatives are fairly poorly written. That one, you know, if people want to have $30 tabs, I'm fine with them voting for it and passing it. But that one, as far as I'm concerned, had problems in that, to me, it had multiple subjects. It had taking away the revenue flow of bonds that have been sold. You know, it just had its problems, and most of our initiatives do, and it's going to the courts. If the courts rule it's fine, I'm okay with that. If they don't, then you know, we'll continue on where we are. But the initiative process, I think it's a great process that the people can go to and have an initiative. But you know, every initiative it seems like comes along, we have to fix it as a legislature. You can see a couple of years ago when we did the one on police. The actions of how police operate. You know, when we did that initiative, it had problems. The very next year, with consensus of both sides, we had to go in and fix it. The marijuana initiative, we had a mess with that, had to fix that. When we took liquor and went from a government-run liquor program sales to privacy, it was a mess, and we had to go back in and fix that. And I think this is just another example that the initiative process is a great process, but they ought to take some time and write an initiative that really makes some sense and doesn't have these problems. And I can say the same thing with the gun initiative we had a few years ago. I didn't support it. In fact, I'm probably the only one in this room that went on television in Portland on a talk show and talked against the gun initiative a few years ago, the one that's in the courts right now. It had problems. It had constitutional problems, not only about the Second Amendment, but about the Commerce Clause. It had multiple things in there. So the bell went off, so I guess I have to end there.
You're allowed a little finish in a sentence. Jeff Wilson, how do you feel about the People's Mandate and $30 car tabs, even if it did sabotage an existing government program, a bond program such as Dean Tacko mentions?
Well, why stop at the $30 car tabs? Let's throw in an income tax, carbon tax. Let's throw a number of things out there that the will of the people have sent a very loud and clear message to Olympia, either through an initiative, advisory votes, or something even on just the overall general ballot, that no means no, or we want $30 car tabs. That's all that means. The will of the voter must be respected. You know, Dean will talk to you about the constitutionality of it. We've had this horrible struggle between the 19th District and Olympia listening to us. For example, an income tax. We have said no, no, no. And they say, we're going to keep not listening to you, and we're not going to listen to you. And this is what this whole thing is about. So a $30 car tab, yes, it struck a nerve, but it's the same nerve that everybody has. It's so simple, $30 means $30.
Mm-hmm. Follow-up for you, Jeff. What you alluded to some changes in the district. I mean, this was 60 years ago, a labor-heavy, very democratic district. Now it seems to have changed its stripes, particularly with its attitude toward government. How do you think this district has changed, and how do you think your candidacy represents that change?
Wow, you just kind of just summed up my candidacy. I'm asking the voters here in November to vote for me for change, and I'm basing that on, are you happy with what you have seen happen under my challenger's watch? The last few years, it's been very obvious, our struggles. Olympia is on a spending spree that is out of control. Under Senator Tacko's watch, the state budget has risen from $35 billion to $54 billion. That's a 49+% increase. All voters have to do is say, well, is my paycheck increased 49%? They've certainly spent a lot. And these aren't sustainable actions, especially that the average Washington state person's income has only gone up. Payroll has only increased 7%. Olympia hasn't kept pace with any form of economic reality. And now that the pandemic comes along, we got a problem. And this problem clearly demonstrates just how unsustainable the spending has been. What happened in the 19th District? We were a manufacturing stronghold. That's gone, Hal. That's a great point. Just look to our friends and neighbors in Seattle, in the King County area. You talk about manufacturing. Boeing is giving the goodbye signal when it comes to their Dreamliner assemblies to the state of Washington. I think that, again, resonates very loud and clearly. What do you mean what's been going on the past few years? This is the direct result of our failed even tax system, which includes a manufacturing tax should have been a flat fee, not a special tax for Boeing or anybody. The Boeing problems, a lot of them could have been averted. So I'll just again give credit where credit is due. We're in this fiscal mess and manufacturing is an all-time low. I don't have any other place to place responsibility. I'm prepared to blame, but I'm also prepared to offer solutions.
Dean Tacko, as part of the Democrats' watch, what's your perception of these changes? And
well, one of the big changes that's happened in this district, and it is industrial jobs. And it's for a number of reasons. We've lost the aluminum plant. And that had nothing to do with anything, that was us local legislators or even the state legislator can do. When the energy debacle hit a number of years ago, I'm sure everybody remembers the story. There went the electricity. They could sell it on the market cheaper than they could use, and make more money than they could make in aluminum. And there went the aluminum jobs. Automation. You go down to these mills, and I've been in them years ago, and you'd have 2,000 people in a mill. Now you have 700, and 300 of them are sitting behind computers. So the jobs just aren't there for a number of reasons. I was out in the woods with Rainier last summer, and they were logging. They were on a logging site. The log trucks were just pouring out of there, and they had about 6 guys working. And to get that same amount of timber out of there probably 40, 50 years ago, you would have had 12 or 15 people working on that landing or that site. So a lot of it is not necessarily a political thing that you can point to. There's a number of things, and one of them is we're losing industrial jobs for a number of reasons, and I just gave you a couple.
Jeff Wilson, what might this district look like in 4 years should you be elected? And given that COVID hopefully would be behind us, how might these changes begin to manifest themselves?
The changes take time, and we have to bring both sides together. I have lots of experience working with both sides of the aisle. I have lots of experience working with federal, state, local, and all kinds of officials and staff and community members. Been doing that for years, both in the private sector, now for the Port of Longview. You know, quite frankly, within 4 years from now, I would hope that a lot of the same things I brought to the Port of Longview would have occurred. Restore a little bit of trust and faith in the voter in Olympia. I mean, I think the citizens deserve to know that their voice is heard. You just mentioned $30 car tabs. That's a hearing problem to Olympia. People want to be heard, and I would hope that within 4 years, I will have been a large player in restoring some transparency and some faith and some trust in the government, just like I've done at the Port of Longview. The Port of Longview is a fine, fine organization. Together, we've made a lot of changes. I'm so proud of that. And in fact, that's a success story. I'm facing all of the challenges, the unfairness that, say, the port and other entities have to deal with. We've had to find very constructive ways to compromise and to move the ball forward. And it's going to really just take some common sense. And with politics, yeah, a lot of this is completely political. We're completely politically responsible for our economy and the lack of success for it in the 19th. You asked a previous question about manufacturing. I didn't even want you to stop there. I wanted you to talk about fishing. I wanted you to talk about oysters, burrowing shrimp, and all the other things that have been negated from our beautiful natural resources that we can not only take pride in, but we can make a living at. So I would like to tie that in, transparency, into honest and very fair economic recovery, and incentivize business to be successful within our communities.
Besides saving oysters, which I think we all do agree on, Dean Tacko, what would be your vision 4 years from now to address directly the problems Jeff is alluding to?
Well, there's a lot of things I'd like to see in 4 years from now, and I'd like to see them sooner. You know, one of them is I'd like to see a robust fishing industry, and you know, unfortunately, the state doesn't manage fish; the courts do, and that is a frustration. You know, I would like to see some manufacturing jobs. If you get the manufacturing jobs, the ancillary jobs will follow along. You know, I'd like to see the timber industry be back as it was. It's still a very vibrant in our community, but we've got some problems like in Pacific and Wahkiakum County, you have the marbled murrelet, and a lot of land is locked up over a fight of how we're going to handle the marbled murrelet. I've been engaged in that, trying to come up with some answers, but it's a tough one. You know, I will say, give a little bit of kudos to Representative Walsh, and I have been sitting in on DNR meetings trying to come up with an answer. It's going to take some money, as most things do. You know, another thing I'd like to see is more kids graduating from college. And we did the opportunity grants, which, and I know that was a tax increase on large employers of high tech, basically. But I'd like to see some of our kids coming out of college and getting these jobs. Why do we continue to hire high-tech and biomedical people from other countries when we're not graduating our own kids to get those jobs? And that's one thing I'm looking forward to, that once this kicks in here now, that it's now, we just passed it last year, that we can get these kids scholarships. Many kids will, from low income to even moderate middle income kids, will be going to college for free. And we can get some of these kids with their technical degrees, and we aren't hiring people from out of the area, out of the country for these jobs. That's kind of the vision I'd like to see.
Okay. We have about 10 minutes left. I'd like to ask you each one more question and then ask you for your closing statement. The question is very simply, what makes you feel better qualified than your opponent for this seat? Jeff Wilson first, please.
Well, it's really my commitment. Age won't matter, gender, race. It's the passion of my commitment. I, again, have disclosed that I've never made my living off of the public. I've not been a career politician. I've worked in private sector. I've been hired. I've been fired. Been doing so for years. It wasn't until age 55 that I entered into this reason. And now that I've seen that so much of this is just bringing people together, quit making excuses, maybe even put your party aside once in a while, and we can get together and handle some of these problems. So what makes me most qualified is my business experience, my civic experience, my experience outside of the experience that I may not have. In other words, I have not had a full-time job in Olympia for all these years. I have not worked for the government. It's a new world for me. I have 4 years experience, but I have a track record to clearly lay down in front of the voting public of my accomplishments at the port. And they're always going to follow the same principles that I've announced tonight twice. It'll be my third time. Always follow the will of the people and respect the Constitution. That alone, that mindset makes me more than qualified to be in Olympia.
Thank you very much. Dean Tacko, what makes you the better qualified of the two candidates for this retention of your seat?
Well, I think it is the experience of being there, and look at how successful I have been. One of the things I really try to do is to bring projects home, particularly projects that might have jobs tied to them. You can start in Aberdeen and you can drive down to Raymond, South Bend, Ilwaco, Long Beach, come through Cathlamet, up here to Longview and Kelso, and I can show you dozens and dozens of projects that I have really gone to bat for to get them funded. And that's what one of my major things I really try to do in the legislature. And I have the ear of people on both sides of the aisle. But I'll tell you, in reality, it's our side of the aisle that's going to make the budget, whether it's the transportation budget, the operating budget, or the capital budget. The Democrats are going to make it. There's no doubt, and I mean, you may think it's going to be different, but the Democrats will still have control of the Senate when this race is over, whether I win or not. So the question is who's going to be inside that caucus room arguing for Southwest Washington and rural people? There's 4 of us in the Democratic caucus that are considered the moderates, and I proudly say that that's me. One of them is me. And we are able inside that caucus to bring that rural vision and how these bills that may or may not come to the floor. And I can tell you that we have stopped some bills from coming to the floor that wouldn't have been good for Southwest Washington. And that's why I think you need me back there to be in that caucus room. I don't go out on the floor and make a lot of speeches. Speeches on the floor are not, I mean, debate on the floor is not debate, it's speeches. Where the real action is inside the caucus. And that's where I do my talking and defend Southwest Washington and the rural things that we need.
Thank you very much. Your closing statements, a couple of minutes each for you. Thanks. This has been a wonderful exchange. And Jeff, please go first with your closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the viewers taking the time that have tuned in to watch this now or recorded for later. I think you've heard quite clearly that you have a choice. You're going to have to make it on or before November 3rd. Do you like to send Senator Tacko back to his job where he said he's a placeholder, where he's even mentioned tonight free college? He's mentioned tonight it would probably be more worse if he wasn't there. He's been somehow maybe making it better. I'm just going to ask the viewers tonight, consider this. Are you satisfied with the way things have been going the past few years with my challenger in control? If not, please consider me. I bring with it a sincerity of transparency, a proven track record, not interested in speeches, not really even interested in and making sure that I'm the most popular person with the party or the parties. For the fourth time tonight, I'd like to make it very clear that my inspiration comes from the will of the people and following the Constitution, and I want to go to work for the men and women of the 19th Legislative District. I'm not going to work for a political party. I'm going to work to represent your voice. I think it's well past due that we consider change, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to listen to me tonight. You can always find out more information on my website at www.jeffwilsonforsenate.com or check us out on Facebook. I'd love to answer any of your questions, and I so appreciate the opportunity tonight. Bill and Hal and Sue, Andy, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Dean Tacko, your final comments?
Yeah, well, again, I'd like to thank everyone for putting this on. It's been an interesting evening, and thank you, Hal, particularly for moderating this. You know, I'm not going to take a lot of time because I think that you can look at my track record of what's come to this district in projects, money spent, jobs that have been created through those projects. You know, that's what I'm there for. Experience matters. In these trying times that we're going to have, it's going to take some experience. And I've been there through a recession a few years ago and how we struggled to get past that. This isn't quite as bad as what we had back then, but it's going to be tough. We're going to have to cut programs. We're going to have to shift money around. I hope we don't have to raise revenue, but I will say that I will not take anything off the table. We have got to keep the state operating. So I will just kind of sum it up that experience matters. I've been there. I know how it works. I have the ear of the people inside the legislature, and I'm ready to go back and continue to work like I have in the past.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. A very informative debate. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in with us this evening. There will be rebroadcasts or other sources of this video available that you will hear about. I want to thank our sponsors once more, Kelso Longview, Bill Chamber of Commerce, and particularly Bill Markham, who's been a great advocate of this project from the start. We appreciate that. The Columbia River Reader and Sue Piper Publisher, of course. Grants at the Monticello. I hope you're firing up a steak for me right now. Grant, buy 4 entrees and get that complimentary fondue free. Finally, Pets, Ponds, and Instruments. I've got to stop by there sometime just to see how they're doing it. Located in downtown Longview, ready to serve your sporting goods, musical, and jewelry needs. Finally, thanks to Citizens Update, to Spencer and Andy. Thank you to viewers for tuning in and for your interest in these important races. I'm Hal Calvin. I appreciate your attention. Good night.